General Kethvar stood before the towering crystalline council chamber of the Zephyrian Empire, his four arms trembling slightly as he prepared to deliver the most important warning of his military career. The massive hall stretched upward into darkness, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that reflected the mood of the 12 high counselors seated on their elevated platforms. "Honored counselors," Kethvar began, his voice carrying across the vast space, "I come before you today with urgent intelligence regarding the species known as humans. We must not engage them in warfare." A ripple of dismissive chittering echoed through the chamber. Counselor Vextana, her serpentine form coiled elegantly on her platform, raised one clawed appendage. "General, you speak of a species that has barely achieved interstellar travel. Our scouts report they possess primitive fusion drives and crude kinetic weapons. What possible threat could they pose to our mighty empire?" Kethvar's mandibles clicked nervously. He had served the Empire for over 3 centuries, commanding fleets that had conquered 17 star systems. Never before had he felt such dread about a potential enemy. "Counselor, with respect, you did not witness what I witnessed at the Battle of Kepler 442. The general's mind drifted back to that fateful encounter 3 months ago. His reconnaissance fleet had been monitoring human expansion into what the Empire considered its territory. The humans had established a small mining colony on a barren world, extracting rare minerals with typical human efficiency. It should have been a simple matter to demonstrate imperial superiority and claim the system. "I deployed a single destroyer," Kethvar continued, "the Void's Embrace, to remove the human presence. The colony consisted of perhaps 2,000 civilians and a handful of security personnel with basic projectile weapons. It should have been over within minutes." Counselor Morgeth, a massive creature whose rocky hide suggested geological patience, rumbled his impatience. "Get to the point, General. What went wrong with this trivial operation?" Kethvar's eye stalks focused intently on the council. "The humans, they did not surrender. When the Void's Embrace entered orbit and transmitted the standard demand for evacuation, the human response was a single word: no." Another wave of dismissive sounds echoed through the chamber. Counselor Zephlin, her gaseous form shifting between purple and amber, spoke in harmonious tones. "Surely your destroyer's superior firepower convinced them otherwise. The Void's Embrace fired warning shots into the ocean near their primary settlement," Kethvar replied. "Standard procedure to demonstrate overwhelming force. The humans responded by launching their orbital defense platforms, crude missiles with conventional warheads. Our shields absorbed the impacts easily." The general paused, his breathing becoming more labored as he recalled the events. "That is when I learned something terrifying about humanity. Captain Yulmar of the Void's Embrace contacted me, laughing about the futile human resistance. He ordered a targeted strike on their mining facility to end the matter quickly." Kethvar's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "The humans evacuated their entire population to the mining tunnels underground. 2,000 civilians, including their young, crammed into spaces meant for equipment storage. Then they did something that still haunts my sleep cycles." The chamber fell silent. Even the ambient humming of the bioluminescent walls seemed to quiet in anticipation. "They sent a message to our destroyer," Kethvar continued. "Not a surrender, not a plea for mercy. A human female identifying herself as Colony Director Sarah Chen appeared on our screens. She was covered in dust from the evacuation, holding a small human child in her arms, and she looked directly into the camera and said, 'If you want our world, you'll have to take it from us piece by piece. We won't run.'" Counselor Vextana's laugh was like breaking glass. "And this display of futile defiance concerns you? Surely your destroyer ended this comedy quickly?" Kethvar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "Captain Yulmar," targeted the entrance to their underground shelter with a focused plasma beam, the kind of weapon that can carve through starship armor. The humans had 15 minutes to evacuate before the tunnel system would be compromised. The general's 4 hands clenched into fists. They did not evacuate. Instead, they sent another message. This time it was a human male introducing himself as Security Chief Marcus Rodriguez. He was standing in the tunnel entrance, directly in the path of our incoming fire. And he smiled, actually smiled, and said, "You want to kill civilians? You'll have to go through me first." An uncomfortable silence stretched across the chamber. Even the most warlike counselors seemed unsettled by this account. "The plasma beam struck the tunnel entrance," Kethvar continued, his voice growing stronger as he approached the crucial part of his testimony. "Rodriguez died instantly. But in those final seconds before impact, he detonated explosive charges that collapsed the tunnel entrance, sealing the civilians inside safely while sacrificing himself." Counselor Morgeth shifted his massive bulk. "A noble death, perhaps, but ultimately meaningless. Your destroyer could simply have carved through the rock." "Yes," Kethvar agreed grimly, "and Captain Yulmar intended to do exactly that. But then the humans did something that changed everything. They sent a third message. This time it was a group of 20 volunteers, all standing at various points around the planet where our sensors indicated civilian shelters. Each of them carried improvised explosive devices." The general's voice became urgent. "They called themselves the Human Shield Protocol. Each volunteer was prepared to die to buy time for the others. They weren't soldiers, counselors. They were miners, engineers, teachers, medical personnel, ordinary civilians who chose to stand between death and their families." Kethvar paused, allowing the weight of this to settle over the chamber. But that was not the end of it. As our scans detected more shelters, more humans appeared at each location. They were organizing themselves into a planet-wide network of sacrifice. Every adult human on that world was prepared to die before allowing harm to come to their young. The silence in the chamber had become oppressive. Several counselors had stopped their usual fidgeting and shifting. "Captain Yulmar contacted me," Kethvar continued. "He requested permission to glass the entire planet from orbit. 'End this madness quickly,' he said, but I refused. Something about the humans' behavior disturbed me deeply. Instead, I ordered him to withdraw and requested additional reconnaissance." Counselor Zeflin's gaseous form had shifted to deep red, indicating confusion. "You withdrew from a handful of determined civilians?" "I withdrew because I realized we were not facing civilians," Kethvar replied firmly. "We were facing something far more dangerous. A species that values the survival of their young above their own lives and possesses the organizational capability to act on that value under extreme stress." The general activated a holographic display showing star charts of the local galactic region. "Over the following weeks, I conducted extensive surveillance of human space. What I discovered should terrify every member of this council." Red indicators appeared on the star map, marking human colonies and outposts. Humans have established settlements in 43 star systems. Each colony, no matter how small, maintains detailed survival protocols. Each settlement has identified defensive positions, evacuation procedures, and contingency plans for various catastrophic scenarios. More data flowed across the display. But more concerning is their industrial capacity. Humans don't just establish colonies, they transform entire worlds. In less than 50 years since achieving interstellar flight, they've built extensive mining operations, manufacturing centers, and shipyards across dozens of systems. Kethvar manipulated the display to show comparative industrial output. Their production capacity already rivals our own core worlds. And unlike our empire, which relies on subject species for manual labor, humans perform most of their own industrial work. They've developed automated systems that can operate with minimal supervision. Counselor Vextana's serpentine hood flared in agitation. You speak of industrial capacity as if it were a military threat. Their technology remains centuries behind our own. That is precisely the danger, Kethvar warned. Their technology is simple, robust, and easily manufactured. While we have perfected elegant solutions using exotic materials and complex engineering, humans have created crude but effective alternatives using common elements. The holographic display shifted to show human weapon systems. Their kinetic weapons are primitive by our standards, but they can be manufactured quickly and in vast quantities. Their armor is basic, but their soldiers are extensively trained and remarkably adaptable. Kethvar highlighted specific data points. Most concerning is their approach to warfare itself. Our empire has dominated through technological superiority and overwhelming force. We demonstrate our power, demand surrender, and integrate conquered populations into our hierarchy. Humans appear to have developed an entirely different military philosophy. The general's eye stalks focused on each counselor in turn. They prepare for total warfare, not just military engagements, but complete societal mobilization for survival. Every human settlement maintains stockpiles of weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, and food sufficient for extended siege warfare. New images appeared in the display, showing human civilian infrastructure. Their colonies are designed with defense in mind. Underground facilities, redundant communication systems, distributed manufacturing capabilities. Each settlement can potentially function independently even if cut off from their main worlds. Counselor Morgeth rumbled thoughtfully. You suggest they have prepared for invasion. I suggest they have prepared for extinction, Kethvar corrected. And that preparation makes them incredibly dangerous. A species that expects to fight for its very survival will employ tactics that we cannot anticipate. The general's mandibles clicked as he accessed additional files. My reconnaissance teams have intercepted human communications. Their entertainment media is particularly revealing. They create fictional stories about warfare, invasion, and survival in catastrophic circumstances. These stories are immensely popular among their population. Images flashed across the display showing human movies, books, and games. They repeatedly tell themselves stories about small groups of determined fighters defeating overwhelming odds through cleverness, courage, and sacrifice. These narratives have become deeply embedded in their cultural consciousness. Kethvar's voice grew more urgent. But most disturbing of all is their historical record. Humans have waged warfare against their own species for thousands of years. They have developed tactics for fighting enemies with superior technology, greater numbers, and better resources. They have experience with guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, and prolonged resistance campaigns. The display showed historical human conflicts, battles where smaller forces had defeated larger ones through unconventional tactics. They have faced extinction-level threats before and survived. They have knowledge of how to fight when defeat seems certain. The chamber remained silent as the counselors absorbed this information. Finally, Counselor Vextana spoke. Even if your analysis is correct, General, they remain a primitive species. Our fleet could glass their worlds before they could mount effective resistance. Kethvar's response came swiftly. Could we? Their 43 colonies span nearly 100 light years. Our fastest fleets would require months to reach all their settlements. During that time, they would be preparing, communicating, and adapting their defenses. The general brought up more tactical displays. And unlike our previous conquests, humans appear to maintain active communication networks between their colonies. An attack on one settlement would immediately alert all others. We would lose the element of surprise after the first engagement. Counselor Zeflin pulsed bright orange, indicating deep concern. You believe they would resist simultaneously across all systems? I believe they would coordinate their resistance in ways we have never encountered, Kethvar replied. Our previous conquests involved species that surrendered when their military forces were defeated or their capital worlds were threatened. Humans appear to have no single point of failure. The general highlighted human governmental structures on the display. They operate under something they call the Colonial Federation. Each world maintains significant autonomy while participating in a loose alliance. There is no single capital world we could capture to force surrender. No central authority that speaks for all humans. Kethvar's voice dropped to a warning tone. If we attack humanity, we would not be fighting one enemy. We would be fighting 43 separate but coordinated foes, each prepared to continue resistance even if all others were defeated. The implications hung heavy in the chamber air. Finally, Counselor Morgeth spoke. What do you recommend, General? Kethvar straightened to his full height, his 4 arms spread in a gesture of absolute conviction. We must not provoke humanity. We should establish diplomatic contact, offer trade agreements, and treat them as equals despite their technological limitations. Several counselors began to speak at once, but Kethvar raised his voice to override them. If we attempt to conquer humanity, we risk facing an enemy unlike any we have encountered, a species that will sacrifice everything rather than surrender, a species that has spent thousands of years learning how to fight against superior odds. A species that has prepared its entire civilization for exactly this scenario. The general's final words echoed through the chamber with prophetic weight. Honored counselors, humanity may be primitive, but they are not weak. They may lack our technology, but they possess something we have never faced in our enemies. Absolute determination to survive, and the tactical knowledge to make that determination meaningful in warfare. The chamber fell into contemplative silence as the counselors considered this unprecedented warning from their most experienced military commander. The council session had ended 3 days ago, but the arguments still echoed through the crystal halls of the Zephyrian capital. General Kethvar walked slowly through the observation deck of the orbital station, watching transport ships ferry delegates back to their homeworlds. His warning had fallen on deaf ears, as he had feared it would. Counselor Vexitana had been particularly dismissive. Her serpentine form coiled in obvious contempt as she delivered her final judgment. General, your caution does you credit, but the Empire has never retreated from expansion because of theoretical fears. The human territories contain resources we require, and their strategic position along the Meridian trade route makes them valuable regardless of their inhabitants. The vote had been unanimous among the 12 counselors. War with humanity would proceed as planned. Kethvar's protests about human resilience and tactical adaptability were noted in the official record and promptly ignored. The Empire's war machine would demonstrate to these upstart mammals the folly of resisting Zephyrian supremacy. As Kethvar stood watching the stars, his aide Commander Felthok approached with obvious reluctance. The younger officer's carapace bore the ritual scars of recent promotion, and his deference to the general was absolute. Sir, Felthok began hesitantly, the War Council has issued new orders. You are to command the first conquest fleet in the initial assault on human space. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in bitter irony. Of course. The Council wishes me to personally execute the strategy I warned against. He turned from the observation port, his 4 arms clasped behind his back. What force allocation have they authorized? Felthok consulted his datapad. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, 48 frigates, and 200 support vessels, the largest fleet assembled since the Hegemony Wars 50 years ago. The general nodded grimly. And our target? The human system designated Wolf 359. Intelligence indicates it's a major industrial center with approximately 8 million inhabitants across 3 worlds and numerous orbital installations. Kethvar reviewed the tactical data as they walked toward the Fleet Command Center. Wolf 359 was indeed a significant human settlement, but more importantly, it was positioned to serve as a gateway into the inner human territories. Its capture would demonstrate Imperial power while providing a staging area for subsequent conquests. "What do we know about human defensive capabilities in that system?" Kethvar asked. Felthok's response was confident. "Minimal, sir. Orbital defense platforms with kinetic weapons, perhaps 24 patrol vessels of destroyer class or smaller. Our smallest cruiser outguns their most powerful ship by a factor of 10. As they entered the command center, Kethvar felt the familiar weight of impending battle settling over his consciousness. The massive chamber buzzed with activity as thousands of technicians prepared the fleet for departure. Holographic displays showed ship positions, supply manifests, and tactical projections. Fleet Admiral Zex Kotha, Kethvar's immediate superior, greeted them at the central command platform. The Admiral's crystalline exoskeleton reflected the blue glow of the tactical displays as she reviewed final preparations. "General," Admiral Zex Kotha said without preamble, "the Council has expressed confidence in your ability to handle this human problem efficiently. They expect a quick resolution with minimal Imperial casualties." Kethvar suppressed his instinct to renew his warnings. "Admiral, I request permission to attempt diplomatic contact before initiating hostilities. Perhaps we can achieve our objectives without unnecessary bloodshed." The Admiral's laugh tinkled like breaking crystal. "General, the humans have already rejected our territorial claims in the disputed regions. They've made it clear they intend to continue expanding despite our warnings. Diplomacy has failed." "With respect, Admiral," Kethvar pressed. "Formal territorial demands delivered through long-range communications are hardly meaningful diplomacy. Face-to-face negotiations might yield different results." Admiral Zex Kotha's exoskeleton darkened, indicating impatience. "The Council's orders are explicit. We demonstrate Imperial strength, demand immediate evacuation of the disputed systems, and begin occupation procedures. If humans resist, we eliminate resistance and establish control." Kethvar recognized the futility of further argument. The Empire's military doctrine had proven successful against 17 different species over the past 3 centuries. No amount of theoretical concern about human psychology would overcome that track record. "Understood, Admiral. When do we depart?" "Fleet departure is scheduled for tomorrow at the 6th bell. Travel time to Wolf 359 will be 18 days using the Meridian Corridor hyperspace route." That evening, Kethvar stood in his private quarters reviewing every piece of intelligence the Empire had gathered about humanity. The data files painted a picture of a species that was paradoxically advanced and primitive, unified and fractured, peaceful and violent. Human technology lagged behind Imperial standards by approximately 200 years, yet their industrial output suggested remarkable efficiency. Their political structure seemed chaotic compared to the Empire's hierarchical clarity, yet they had maintained peaceful cooperation across dozens of star systems. Most puzzling were the human cultural artifacts. Their entertainment media suggested an obsession with conflict and survival, yet their diplomatic communications emphasized cooperation and mutual benefit. They created fictional scenarios of alien invasion and human resistance. Yet they consistently attempted to establish trade relationships with every species they encountered. Kethvar paused at a particular intelligence report that detailed human military history. The species had fought continuously for thousands of years, developing increasingly sophisticated methods of warfare. Yet they had also demonstrated remarkable restraint in their expansion into space, carefully avoiding territory claimed by other species. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Commander Felthok appeared on the communication screen, his young features troubled. "General, I've been reviewing the human intelligence files as you instructed. There's something I think you should see immediately. Within minutes, Felthok had arrived at the general's quarters carrying a secured data pad. Sir, I was analyzing human communication intercepts from the past 6 months. There are patterns that our intelligence analysts may have missed. Kethvar accepted the data pad and began scrolling through intercepted human transmissions. Most were routine commercial and administrative communications, but Felthok had highlighted several that stood out. These messages were sent between various human colonies in the weeks following our initial diplomatic contact, Felthok explained. They're discussing something called Protocol 7. The general read the highlighted text carefully. The messages were brief and used terminology that seemed innocuous, but the pattern was unmistakable. Human colonies were coordinating some sort of preparation in response to Zephyrian territorial claims. Have our analysts determined what Protocol 7 refers to? Kethvar asked. No, sir. The humans use very general language, references to supply distribution, communication redundancy, and population dispersal. It could be routine emergency planning or preparation for siege warfare, Kethvar finished grimly. He continued reading the intercepted messages, noting the systematic nature of human activities. Every major colony had received similar communications, and all had acknowledged implementation of whatever Protocol 7 entailed. Felthok highlighted another series of messages. These are even more concerning, sir. They're civilian communications, but they show knowledge of our fleet movements. Kethvar studied the new data carefully. Human civilians were discussing Zephyrian military preparations with disturbing accuracy. Their intelligence network seemed far more sophisticated than Imperial analysts had assumed. How could they have such detailed information about our operations? The general wondered aloud. Sir, I believe they may have infiltrated our communication networks, Felthok replied hesitantly. Some of these messages contain information that was classified at the highest levels. The implications sent a chill through Kethvar's consciousness. If humans had compromised Imperial security to this degree, they might know about the planned assault on Wolf 359. The element of surprise, crucial to Imperial tactics, could be completely lost. Felthok, I want you to conduct a complete analysis of all human intelligence regarding our fleet preparations. If they know we're coming, we need to understand exactly what they know. As his aide departed to begin this urgent task, Kethvar returned to the intelligence files with growing unease. The humans were not behaving like any species the Empire had previously encountered. Their responses to Imperial pressure suggested a level of preparation and coordination that was deeply troubling. The general activated his personal communication system and composed a final message to the War Council. Perhaps a detailed analysis of human preparedness might convince them to reconsider their hasty rush to warfare. Honored counselors, he began. Additional intelligence suggests that humanity may have anticipated our military response to their territorial expansion. Evidence indicates they have implemented comprehensive defensive preparations across all their colonies. I strongly recommend delaying military action until we can better assess their capabilities. He transmitted the message knowing it would likely be ignored, but his duty required the attempt. The Empire was about to encounter an enemy that had studied Imperial tactics and prepared accordingly. The outcome was far from certain. The next morning, the first conquest fleet departed Imperial space as scheduled. 126 warships carrying the most advanced weapons technology in the known galaxy, commanded by officers trained in centuries of successful conquest. Their destination was a single star system inhabited by 8 million humans, armed with primitive kinetic weapons and inexplicable determination. As the fleet entered hyperspace, Kethvar stood on the command deck of his flagship watching the stars elongate into streams of light. Somewhere ahead, humanity was waiting. Whether they would surrender, fight, or attempt some third option remained unknown. But the general had a growing certainty that the Empire was about to learn something new about warfare. 18 days later, the Zephyrian fleet would emerge from hyperspace at Wolf 359 to discover that humans had indeed learned of their approach. More importantly, they would discover that humanity's response to impending invasion was unlike anything in the Empire's military experience. The first indication would be the complete absence of human ships in the outer system. No patrol vessels, no defensive formations, no obvious military presence whatsoever. Wolf 359 appeared to be entirely undefended, its three worlds continuing their normal industrial operations as if no threat existed. It was exactly the sort of scenario that Kethvar had learned to fear most. When humans appeared to be doing nothing, it usually meant they were doing something very dangerous indeed. The Zephyrian First Conquest Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Wolf 359 system in perfect formation. 126 warships arranged in classic Imperial attack formation, their energy signatures blazing across the electromagnetic spectrum like angry stars. General Kethvar stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the sensor displays with growing unease. The system appeared completely normal. 3 inhabited worlds continued their regular orbital patterns. Industrial installations operated at standard capacity, and civilian traffic moved between planets following routine schedules. "Sir," reported scanner technician Yulthara, "I'm detecting no military vessels in the outer system. Commercial shipping appears normal. No unusual energy signatures or defensive preparations visible." Commander Felthok studied his tactical displays with obvious confusion. "General, where are their defenses?" Intelligence indicated at least 24 patrol vessels and orbital defense platforms. Kethvar's mandibles clicked nervously. Throughout his military career, he had learned to distrust situations that appeared too simple. An undefended star system containing 8 million humans made no tactical sense, especially when those humans had clearly anticipated the Empire's arrival. "Continue system-wide scans," he ordered. "Focus on asteroid fields, gas giant moons, and any location that could conceal ship formations." Admiral Zexkotha's voice crackled through the fleet communication system. "All ships, maintain attack formation. Proceed to primary target planet Wolf 359b at standard approach speed. Prepare to broadcast surrender demands." As the massive fleet began its stately advance toward the system's primary industrial world, Kethvar reviewed the tactical situation. Wolf 359b contained 6 million humans distributed across 12 major cities and hundreds of smaller settlements. Its orbital infrastructure included manufacturing stations, mining platforms, and commercial shipyards. "Sir," Yulthara called out, "receiving a transmission from Wolf 359b. It's on standard diplomatic frequencies." "Put it through," Kethvar commanded. The main display screen activated to show a human female sitting behind a simple metal desk. She appeared middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and calm brown eyes. Her clothing was unremarkable civilian attire, suggesting she was not a military officer. "I am Director Sarah Chen of the Wolf 359 Colonial Authority," she said in clear, measured tones. "I believe you are the Zephyrian fleet that was expected to arrive today." Kethvar felt a chill run through his consciousness. The humans had not only anticipated their arrival, they had predicted it to the exact day. This level of intelligence gathering suggested capabilities far beyond Imperial estimates. "Director Chen," Kethvar responded formally, "I am General Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. By order of the High Council, you are commanded to evacuate all human personnel from this system within 72 hours. This territory is now claimed under Imperial sovereignty." Director Chen nodded as if she had expected this exact demand. "General, I appreciate your directness. However, I must inform you that the human residents of Wolf 359 decline your evacuation order. This system is our home, and we intend to remain." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Such calm rejection of Imperial demands was unprecedented in their experience. Most species either surrendered immediately or responded with desperate military threats. "Director," Kethvar continued, "you are aware that this fleet possesses the capability to remove human presence from this system by force. Your refusal to evacuate will result in unnecessary casualties." "We understand the disparity in our military capabilities," Director Chen replied calmly. "However, we have concluded that evacuation would not serve our interests. We choose to remain." Admiral Zexkotha's voice interrupted over the fleet channel. "General, end this pointless discussion. Begin bombardment of military targets to demonstrate Imperial resolve." Kethvar hesitated. The system contained no visible military targets, and bombarding civilian installations would escalate the situation beyond diplomatic resolution. "Admiral, request permission to continue negotiations. Perhaps we can reach an accommodation." "Negative, General. Council orders are explicit. Demonstrate superior force and demand compliance." With deep reluctance, Kethvar activated the fleet targeting systems. "Director Chen, I regret to inform you that we will now commence limited bombardment of your orbital installations to demonstrate our capabilities. Please use this time to reconsider evacuation." Director Chen's expression remained completely calm. "General, we understand your position. However, before you begin bombardment, there is something you should know about our preparations." She pressed a control on her desk, and additional humans appeared on the communication screen. Representatives from multiple worlds throughout human space, each identifying their location and colony. "General Kethvar," Director Chen continued, "we have been monitoring your fleet since it departed Zephyrian space 18 days ago. We know your force composition, your tactical doctrine, and your intended objectives." Kethvar's 4 hands clenched involuntarily. Complete intelligence failure was every military commander's nightmare. "More importantly," another voice said as a human male appeared on screen, "we know that your empire has never faced an enemy that refused to surrender when confronted with superior force." This new speaker identified himself as Admiral Jackson Torres, commanding officer of the Human Colonial Defense Force. Unlike the civilian representatives, Torres wore military insignia and spoke with the crisp precision of a career soldier. "General," Admiral Torres continued, "your empire has successfully conquered 17 species over the past 3 centuries. In each case, victory was achieved through demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority, followed by negotiated surrender of the target species. The human admiral activated his own display system, showing detailed analyses of previous Zephyrian conquests. The accuracy of their intelligence was staggering. However, Torres said, humanity does not operate under the same strategic assumptions as your previous opponents. We do not have a central government that can negotiate surrender on behalf of all human colonies. We do not have a single capital world whose capture would end resistance." General Kethvar found himself listening intently, despite his growing alarm. The humans had studied Imperial tactics with the thoroughness of professional military analysts. "Most importantly," Admiral Torres continued, "we have prepared for this exact scenario. Every human colony has implemented Protocol 7, complete militarization of civilian infrastructure and population dispersal to hardened positions." Director Chen resumed speaking. "General, Wolf 359 appears undefended because our entire defensive strategy is based on concealment and dispersion. Our military vessels are hidden throughout the asteroid fields and gas giant moons. Our civilian population has been relocated to underground facilities that can withstand orbital bombardment." She gestured to her simple surroundings. "I am speaking to you from a bunker complex 3 kilometers below the planetary surface. Every major human settlement in this system has similar facilities. connected by underground transportation networks and protected communication systems. The implications struck Kethvar like a physical blow. The humans had not simply prepared for invasion, they had fundamentally restructured their entire civilization for prolonged siege warfare. Furthermore, Admiral Torres added, every human colony maintains stockpiles of weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, and food sufficient for extended resistance. We have distributed manufacturing capabilities to ensure continued production even under bombardment. Commander Felthok whispered urgently to Kethvar, Sir, our sensors are detecting massive underground complexes beneath every major settlement. The energy signatures suggest extensive tunnel networks and industrial facilities. Director Chen seemed to hear this exchange. Your scans are correct. Commander, we have spent the past 6 months converting our colonies into fortress worlds. Every human settlement can now function independently for years if necessary. Admiral Torres reappeared on the display. General, we want you to understand what you're facing. If you attack Wolf 359, you will not be fighting a conventional military force. You will be fighting an entire civilization that has prepared for exactly this battle. The human admiral's expression became grimly serious. We have 8 million people in this system. Every adult human has received military training. Every settlement can produce weapons and ammunition. Every underground complex can shelter civilians while armed volunteers engage your forces. Kethvar felt the tactical situation slipping beyond his control. Imperial doctrine assumed that superior technology could force quick surrender through demonstration of overwhelming power. But humans had eliminated the possibility of quick surrender by dispersing their population and militarizing their entire society. Moreover, Admiral Torres continued, our defensive strategy is not limited to this system. Every human colony has implemented identical preparations. If you attack Wolf 359, 42 other systems will immediately begin coordinated resistance operations. New data appeared on the human displays, showing the full scope of human space. Each marked system represented millions of humans prepared for extended siege warfare. General, Director Chen said softly, we understand that your empire has never faced this kind of resistance. Your previous conquests involved species that could be defeated through conventional military operations. But humanity has studied your methods and prepared accordingly. Admiral Torres nodded agreement. We know we cannot defeat your fleet in open battle. Your technology is superior, your weapons more advanced, your ships more powerful, but we don't intend to fight you in open battle. The human admiral's next words sent a chill through every Zephyrian officer on the bridge. We intend to make conquest so costly that your empire abandons the attempt. We will turn every world into a fortress, every city into a battlefield, every civilian into a potential combatant. Director Chen resumed speaking. General, we offer you one final opportunity for peaceful resolution. Withdraw your fleet, acknowledge our territorial sovereignty, and we will be happy to establish trade relationships with your empire. She paused, her calm expression becoming steely determined. But if you choose to attack, you should understand that humanity will fight until the last person dies or until your forces withdraw in exhaustion. The communication ended, leaving the Zephyrian command bridge in stunned silence. General Kethvar stared at the blank screen, his worst fears confirmed. Humanity had not simply prepared for invasion, they had transformed their entire civilization into a weapon designed specifically to counter Imperial tactics. Admiral Zexkotha's voice broke the silence. General, begin bombardment immediately. Show these mammals the price of defying Imperial will. But Kethvar hesitated, remembering his warning to the High Council. The humans had done exactly what he had predicted. They had prepared for total warfare using tactics the Empire had never encountered. Sir, Commander Felthok whispered urgently, the scanner readings are changing. I'm detecting hundreds of energy signatures emerging from concealment throughout the system. On the tactical displays, previously invisible human ships began appearing as their stealth systems deactivated. Not powerful vessels by Imperial standards, but numerous beyond expectation. Hundreds of small, fast ships emerging from asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, and planetary rings. Admiral Torres's voice returned over the communication system. General, you are now observing the Wolf 359 Defense Fleet, 347 vessels ranging from converted civilian ships to purpose-built attack craft. Each ship is crewed by volunteers prepared to ram your vessels if necessary. The human admiral's tone remained professionally calm. We know you can destroy every ship in our fleet, but we also know that each engagement will cost you time, ammunition, and possibly damaged vessels. Multiply that across 43 star systems, and consider whether the Empire is prepared for such extended warfare. General Kethvar found himself facing the exact scenario he had warned the High Council about. An enemy that refused to surrender, possessed extensive defensive preparations, and was willing to fight to extinction rather than accept conquest. The choice before him was stark: begin a bombardment that would likely succeed but at enormous cost in time and resources, or attempt to find some alternative to the warfare that would devastate both species. As he stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, surrounded by the most powerful military force the Empire had ever assembled, General Kethvar realized that technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy prepared to sacrifice everything for their freedom. The humans were right about one thing: the Zephyrian Empire had never faced this kind of resistance, and as the general contemplated the tactical nightmare ahead, he began to suspect that his warning to the High Council had been far too conservative. Humanity was not just dangerous because of their determination to resist. They were dangerous because they had successfully anticipated and neutralized the Empire's greatest strategic advantage: the ability to force quick surrender through demonstration of overwhelming force. The question now was whether the Empire possessed the wisdom to recognize that some victories cost more than they were worth.